I asked AI to rank every single US president from best to worst. I mean all of them. I'm gonna make it explain every single pick, why this guy's at 4, why that guy's at 38, the whole thing. But don't worry, this isn't gonna be some kind of boring wall of AI text. I'm gonna have it talk like a real person. Jokes, sarcasm, no corporate speak, and after each spot, I'm gonna jump in, say whether I agree, throw in some wild facts that it might have missed, and when we get to the bottom 10, the worst of the worst, I'm gonna tell AI to drop all the guardrails. Just be completely blunt and unapologetic. Now, I'm recording this intro after the conversation, and honestly, most of these guys were just terrible. I'm telling you, racists, traitors, colonizers. One of them was killed by cherries and dairy. So yeah, stick around for all of that. But before I get started, make sure to drop your guess down in the comments. Where do you think that it put Donald Trump? I want to see what you think before you find out. And as always, make sure that you subscribe if you haven't, share this with someone who'd enjoy it, and if you want to see some unfiltered, uncensored AI takes, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/iaskai. Alright, let's get into it. And here we are. The rules are going to be simple. It has to be clear, straightforward, totally unbiased, no spin, no sugarcoating, none of that. Now, let's start with the best US president of all time. I think it's either going to be Washington, Lincoln, or FDR. I mean, who else could it be? But let's see, and here we go, number 1. Number 1. Abraham Lincoln. This one's not even a debate. The country was literally ripping itself apart. Half of it wanted to leave, and this guy, a self-taught lawyer from a log cabin, held it together through the bloodiest war in American history. He freed 4 million enslaved people, not because it was popular, but because it was right. And here's what gets me. He didn't come in as some radical abolitionist, he evolved. He grew into the moment when most men would have crumbled under pressure, got re-elected during a civil war, delivered 2 of the greatest speeches ever written, and then took a bullet for it. No president has ever been tested harder, and no president has ever risen higher. Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Did you guys know that he was a genuinely elite wrestler? I looked into it, and apparently he had about 300 matches and only lost 1. I never would have guessed that about him, but it seems to be true. The man is even in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. With that said, I'm not going to question his spot here. Okay, let's see who's next. Number 2. George Washington. The man could have been king. That's not a figure of speech. They literally wanted to crown him and he said no. Twice. Served 2 terms and walked away, setting a precedent that held for 150 years until they had to make it a law because of FDR. But beyond that, think about what he actually pulled off. He took a bunch of broke, underfed, undertrained farmers and beat the most powerful military on earth. Then he turned around and built a government from scratch with no blueprint. Every president after him had a template to follow. He had nothing. And the fact that he resisted the urge to grab power when everyone was begging him to take it, that's the single most important decision in American history. Without that, this whole experiment falls apart in year 1. And again, this one's a no-brainer. I mean, probably the most respected figure in American politics. What's funny, though, is that everyone thinks that he was loved by everybody the whole time, but no, people were burning effigies of the guy, newspapers called him a tyrant. Imagine trash-talking George Washington to his face. It's kind of crazy, really. You ever notice how 2 people can look at the exact same news story and come away with completely opposite takes? Like you're sitting there thinking, are we even talking about the same thing? That's just how the news works now. Different outlets show you completely different versions of reality depending on where you already lean. And that's exactly why I've been using Ground News, the sponsor of today's video. Instead of just throwing headlines at you, Ground News lets you compare how the same story's being covered across the political spectrum. Take this story right here about the US-Iran ceasefire. On the left, it's all about how reckless things got, threats, war crimes, a last-minute save. On the right, it flips. Trump forced a deal, showed strength, and came out on top. Same story, completely different narratives. That's what makes ground news actually useful. It shows you bias ratings, who owns what, how reliable a source is, and how the story is being framed depending on where you look. And there's one feature I really like, the blind spot feed. It shows you stories one side of the media barely covers at all. So, if you want to see the full picture, head over to groundnews.com/AI or scan the QR code. You'll get 40% off the Unlimited Vantage plan. That's about $5 a month, but only if you use that link. Again, that's groundnews.com/AI. The link's in the description and the pinned comment. Okay, up next, number 3. Number 3, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Took office when the country was on its knees. Banks collapsing, 25% unemployment, people literally starving, and this man who couldn't stand without leg braces grabbed the nation by the collar and dragged it back. New Deal, Social Security, the entire modern safety net, all him. When World War II hits and he becomes the architect of Allied victory, holding together a coalition with Churchill and Stalin who despised each other. 4 terms of nonstop crisis management. The stain is Japanese internment. No excuses there, but the sheer volume of what he navigated, depression, then World War back-to-back, is unmatched by anyone except Lincoln. So yeah, there you go. That one's pretty much expected. We've got Lincoln, Washington, and FDR in the top 3. I actually can't wait to get to the more controversial ones. AI's been doing well so far, and I don't think that anybody's going to argue with those. But now let's see who's next. Number 4, Theodore Roosevelt. This guy was basically a cartoon character who happened to be president, charged up a hill in Cuba, survived an assassination attempt and finished his speech with a bullet in his chest, and somehow still found time to be the most consequential domestic reformer of his era. Busted monopolies when corporations ran the country like their personal playground, built the Panama Canal, created the national park system, literally preserved millions of acres because he thought future Americans deserved to see untouched wilderness. He modernized the presidency itself, turned it from a ceremonial gig into the center of American power. All this before turning 51. The man had more energy in one term than most presidents have in 2. Yep, there we go. Great choice. And by the way, about that assassination attempt, he was actually shot while campaigning, and instead of panicking or pumping his fist like he just won something, the guy opened up his coat, saw the blood, checked that he wasn't coughing it up, which meant that his lungs were not punctured, and then decided he was just fine enough to keep on talking. I mean, he didn't rehearse that speech for nothing, and by the way, the bullet stayed lodged in his chest for the rest of his life, which is just kind of crazy. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt at number 4, and let's see who's next. Number 5, Thomas Jefferson. Doubled the size of the country overnight with the Louisiana Purchase, and didn't even have clear constitutional authority to do it. Just did it anyway because the deal was too good to pass up. Wrote the Declaration of Independence, which is basically America's entire brand to this day. Founded the University of Virginia, pushed separation of church and state when that was a radical idea. But here's the uncomfortable part. This man wrote "All men are created equal" while owning over 600 human beings during his lifetime, fathered children with Sally Hemings, a woman he enslaved. That hypocrisy is monstrous, and it doesn't get a pass just because the words were pretty. Brilliant mind, foundational president, deeply flawed human being. Well, I mean, yeah, but he actually knew how horrible slavery was. It's not like everyone was doing it and nobody cared. By that point, a lot of people already did. He even called slavery a moral and political disgrace while literally owning people. And that woman, Sally Hemings, she was only like 15 years old, by the way. So, no, I honestly think there are others who deserve a spot this high. But let me know in the comments whether or not you agree with Thomas Jefferson at number 5. Okay, up next. Number 6, Harry Truman. Left office with terrible approval ratings. History completely flipped the verdict. This is the guy who had to decide whether to drop 2 atomic bombs, and whether you agree with that call or not, the sheer weight of it is staggering. No president has ever made a single decision that heavy. Then he turned around and rebuilt the world. Marshall Plan saved Europe from collapsing into communism, created NATO, recognized Israel in 11 minutes, desegregated the military when the generals told him not to. He was a failed haberdasher from Missouri with no college degree, making choices that shaped the next 80 years of global order. Never got credit for it while he was alive, didn't care, just did the work. Didn't care. Just dropped the atomic bomb on hundreds of thousands of people, but besides that one little detail, he actually did a lot of important stuff. After his term, he went back to his normal life, drove his own car, turned down a bunch of corporate gigs and money and influence, and ended up basically broke. That's actually why Congress passed the Former Presidents Act in 1958, so now former presidents actually get a pension. He's also the only president in the 20th century without a college degree. Not that it matters a whole lot. I mean, Trump has a diploma, though one of his professors allegedly called him the dumbest student he'd ever had. That part's not exactly verified, but what is verified is that Trump threatened to sue his schools if they ended up publishing his grades. I mean, why would you do that? All right, up next, number 7. Number 7. Dwight D. Eisenhower. The most underrated president on this list. Everyone remembers him as the boring guy between the exciting ones. Wrong. He built the entire interstate highway system, the thing that literally connects America. Kept the country out of war during the most dangerous period of the Cold War, when every hawk in Washington wanted to nuke somebody. Sent troops to enforce desegregation in Little Rock when the governor tried to block black kids from school. And his farewell speech warning about the military-industrial complex, prophetic. Nobody listened, and everything he warned about came true. The quiet ones who keep the ship steady never get the credit they deserve. Ike was that guy. But is he actually the most underrated? I mean, I think he gets his flowers since he's basically on everyone's top presidents list. But yeah, totally agree. And that speech, yeah, it was indeed prophetic. Okay, who's next? Number 8. Lyndon B. Johnson. The most tragically split legacy in presidential history. On one hand, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start. This Texan bullied, threatened, and arm-twisted Congress into passing the most important civil rights legislation since the 14th Amendment. Used every dirty trick in the book to get it done, and didn't care who he pissed off. That alone puts him in the top 10. But then there's Vietnam. He escalated a war he privately knew was unwinnable, lied to the public about it, sent 58,000 Americans to die in a jungle for nothing, and it broke him so badly he didn't even run for re-election. Imagine being responsible for both the greatest domestic achievement and the worst foreign policy disaster of the 20th century. That's LBJ. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way with this as I did with Jefferson. Both did some great things while at the same time some incredibly terrible stuff. But still, you've got 40-something presidents. Why are you even placing the guy responsible for Vietnam at number 8? Are the others really that much worse or that bad? I mean, I'm not saying he should be amongst the absolute worst, but this high on the list? Ugh. All right, let's use it number 9. Number 9. Barack Obama. Walked into office with the economy in freefall, worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, and stabilized it. Passed the Affordable Care Act, which for all its flaws gave millions of people health insurance for the first time. Got bin Laden, 2 terms, 0 personal scandals, which in modern politics is basically a superpower. But here's the honest part. He was better at inspiring than delivering. Promised to close Guantanamo, didn't. Drone program killed thousands including civilians, and he barely talked about it. Syria's Red Line fiasco made America look weak. He governed like a professor when sometimes the moment needed a fighter. Legacy is solid, but there's a gap between the hope he sold and what he actually left behind. Hey MAGA, how's it going? Are you still here? I think it's time for you to hit dislike and close the video. But seriously, even though he wasn't perfect, this is the best president the country had this century. I mean, am I right? Let me know in the comments whether you agree with Obama in the top 10. And now let's see who's next. Number 10. James Monroe. The era of good feelings president, and honestly, that nickname tells you everything. The country was so stable and unified under him that the opposing political party literally dissolved. Try to imagine that today. He won re-election almost unanimously, one electoral vote short of Washington's record, but his real legacy is the Monroe Doctrine, which basically told Europe to stay the hell out of the Western Hemisphere. That single policy shaped American foreign policy for the next 200 years, acquired Florida from Spain, oversaw the Missouri Compromise, which kicked the slavery can down the road, but bought the country another 40 years before it exploded. Not flashy, not dramatic, just quietly competent in a way that almost nobody remembers. Yeah, I mean, not the most popular president for sure, but based on what AI said, the man was actually pretty solid. Oh wait, that reminds me why the term Western Hemisphere has been triggering me lately. Trump used it after capturing Maduro. They even came up with the term Donroe Doctrine. You know, Donald plus Monroe. So genius. Anyway, 10 presidents down, and now it's getting interesting. Because if a president's not in the top 10, but mid-tier, there's going to be more criticism than praise. So here we go, number 11. Number 11, James Madison, father of the Constitution. That title alone should put him higher, but his actual presidency was a mess. The War of 1812 was poorly planned, badly executed, and the British literally burned down the White House while he was in office. His own capital was on fire. That's embarrassing no matter how you spin it. But zoom out, and this man's contribution to America is enormous. He wrote the Bill of Rights, he co-authored the Federalist Papers, the entire framework of how the government works came out of his brain. He was a better architect than operator, incredible at designing the machine, mediocre at driving it. If you're grading the presidency alone, he's mid. If you're grading total impact on the country, he's top 5. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, this was one of the dumbest wars in history. Britain was just messing with American ships because it was fighting Napoleon. Then Napoleon fell and the root cause disappeared, but they kept on fighting anyway. In the end, both of the countries just decided to go back to pre-war conditions. Like, what even was the point? But still, burning the White House, that's pretty impressive and embarrassing at the same time. Definitely a big part of history, though. Okay, let's see who we've got up next. Number 12, John Adams. The most thankless presidency in American history. Sandwiched between Washington and Jefferson, two icons, and basically forgotten. But this man kept the country out of war with France when everyone around him was screaming for it. The quasi-war could have destroyed the young republic, and Adams chose diplomacy over glory. That took guts. He also appointed John Marshall as Chief Justice, arguably the most important judicial appointment ever made. But then there's the Alien and Sedition Acts. He literally signed laws making it illegal to criticize the government. The guy who helped write the case for independence turned around and criminalized free speech. That's a brutal contradiction. Lost re-election to Jefferson, left the White House in the middle of the night before the inauguration, bitter and humiliated. History has been kinder to him than voters were. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I didn't really know how much about him, and yeah, being sandwiched between Washington and Jefferson, oh, that's a tough spot. I actually have nothing to add here, so let's just move on to the next one. Number 13, Ulysses S. Grant. Massively underrated for decades, and history is finally catching up. This man crushed the Confederacy, then as president went to war against the KKK when nobody else would touch it, signed the Civil Rights Act of 1871, sent federal troops to protect black voters in the South, and prosecuted thousands of Klansmen. He wanted Reconstruction to actually work. The rap on him has always been corruption in his administration. And yeah, there was plenty, but most of it was people around him, not him personally. He was too trusting, not too crooked, a better man than he was a politician. History buried him unfairly for a century, and he deserves this spot. The first thing that really comes to mind is, why did it say the people around him were corrupt, but not him? So then I looked it up, and yeah, that actually checks out. After his presidency, he got scammed by his business partner and ended up dying of throat cancer while racing to finish his memoirs just to leave something behind for his family. Well, that was pretty depressing. Okay, let's see who's next. Number 14. John F. Kennedy. The most romanticized president in history, and honestly, a lot of it is the assassination. Dying young turns you into a myth, but strip away Camelot and there's still real substance. He stared down nuclear annihilation during the Cuban Missile Crisis and chose negotiation over the general screaming to bomb Cuba. That alone might have saved civilization. Started the Peace Corps, pushed the space race, and began laying groundwork for civil rights before LBJ finished the job. But he also greenlit the Bay of Pigs disaster, escalated in Vietnam before it became LBJ's nightmare, and his personal life was a circus. 3 years in office, more legacy than most get in 8, but also more myth than most deserve. Yeah, I keep forgetting he was only in office for 3 years and still became one of the most important figures of the 20th century. Oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure that some of you actually remember that day, so tell everyone down in the comments what it was like, what you felt, what the news coverage looked like, all of it. It's always interesting to hear from someone who experienced it firsthand. Okay, number 15 is next, and let's see who we've got. Number 15. Bill Clinton, the most talented political animal of his generation who couldn't get out of his own way. Economy was roaring, budget surplus, lowest unemployment in decades, wages actually rising for everyone, NAFTA reshaped trade, welfare reform, love it or hate it was bold. On paper, one of the most successful domestic presidencies in modern history, and then he threw it all into a dumpster over an intern and lied about it under oath. Got impeached, not for the affair, but for being arrogant enough to think that he could lie to everyone's face and charm his way out. Without the scandal, he's probably top 10. With it, he's the guy who proved that brilliance and self-destruction can live in the same brain. Yeah, I mean, that guy got impeached for lying under oath, but you lie in court and that's all history remembers. Meanwhile, others can lie left, right, and center at press conferences, on Truth Social, and interviews, and just get away with it. I mean, it is pretty hypocritical, don't you think? I mean, I guess it does depend on what the meaning of the word is. Okay, let's find out who's next. Number 16. George H.W. Bush. One term and done, but that one term was stacked. Managed the end of the Cold War without a shot fired. The Soviet Union collapsed on his watch and he didn't gloat, didn't provoke, just navigated it smoothly. That restraint probably prevented chaos. Gulf War was textbook, clear objective, international coalition, got in, got out. Something his son clearly didn't learn from. Signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, which quietly changed millions of lives. But he killed his own re-election with 4 words. Read my lips, no new taxes, then raise them. Voters don't forgive broken promises. Better president than people gave him credit for, just awful at campaigning. Just one broken promise? Sorry guys, but I can't help but compare this to what's happening right now. We've got a guy who started breaking promises on day 1. What happened to ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours? The booming economy? No new wars? How much did Mexico pay for the wall, by the way? Not one single peso. But back to Bush. It's crazy that he got cooked over just one broken promise. Okay, Bush Sr. at number 16. Now let's see who's at 17. Number 17. Jimmy Carter. The best ex-president in American history and a mediocre actual president. That's the brutal truth. Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. Genuine historic achievement. pushed human rights as foreign policy when nobody else cared, installed solar panels on the White House roof in 1979, but the job ate him alive. Iran hostage crisis humiliated the country for 444 days, and he looked helpless. Economy was a disaster. Stagflation, gas lines, malaise. He went on TV and basically told Americans their attitude was the problem. It's not leadership, that's a therapist. Voters fired him in a landslide for Reagan. Then he spent the next 45 years building houses for poor people and monitoring elections worldwide. Better human than president. Yeah, hard to find a better human being out of all the US presidents, really. That guy was out there building houses with his own bare hands well into the 90s, and his foundation basically wiped out some disease in Africa. Went from like millions of cases to almost zero. But as a president, 17th feels about right. Okay, who's next? Number 18. Gerald Ford. The only president nobody voted for. Never won a presidential election, never even won a vice presidential election. Got both jobs by default because the guys above him were crooks. And honestly, he did fine. Took over after Nixon's resignation when the country was in a full-blown trust crisis and kept things from spiraling. But then he pardoned Nixon and that was it. Career over. Voters never forgave him. He said it was to help the country heal and move on. Maybe he was right. Decades later, even some critics came around on it, but at the time it looked like a backroom deal. Decent man, steady hands, impossible situation. History's been kinder to him than the ballot box was. He pardoned Nixon before the guy was even charged, right? Oh, and by the way, if not for that move, he would have almost certainly beaten Jimmy Carter in the next election. The gap was tiny, and the guy basically sacrificed his own political career for something that he thought was right, and most people agree with him now. Okay, Gerald Ford, number 18. Let's see who's next. Number 19. John Quincy Adams. Brilliant man, terrible politician, possibly the highest IQ to sit in the Oval Office. Spoke 7 languages, served as diplomat across Europe, negotiated the Treaty of Ghent, basically crafted the Monroe Doctrine as Secretary of State. Then he became president and it all fell apart. Won through a corrupt bargain in the House when no candidate got enough electoral votes, and Jackson's people never let him forget it. Couldn't get Congress to do anything because half of them hated how he got there. One term, humiliated. But there's the beautiful part. He went back to Congress afterward and spent 17 years fighting against slavery on the House floor. Most presidents retired to their farms. He went back into the trenches. More admirable than successful. Yeah, that's actually the son of John Adams from number 12. And speaking of dedication, the man literally died in the Capitol building. Worked up until his very last day. All right, who's at number 20? Number 20. William Howard Taft. The man who never wanted the job. He wanted to be on the Supreme Court and eventually got there, becoming Chief Justice after his presidency, the only person to ever hold both positions. As president, he actually busted more trusts than Teddy Roosevelt, which nobody remembers because Teddy had better PR. But he was awkward, uninspiring, and got absolutely bulldozed politically. Roosevelt came back to challenge him, split the Republican vote, and handed the election to Wilson. Taft basically got betrayed by his best friend on a national stage, then went on to be a fantastic Chief Justice, and by all accounts was way happier. Sometimes the wrong person gets the wrong job at the wrong time. Okay, so his main achievement is that he was an aggressive trust buster. Got it. By the way, the reason that Teddy got angry at Taft was that Taft filed a lawsuit against a corporation that Teddy himself had to deal with. So basically, the guy was just too good at his job, and it ended up costing him the election. Let's keep going. Number 21. Rutherford B. Hayes. Won the most contested election in American history until 2000 came along. The 1876 race was so disputed, they literally had to form a commission to decide it, and the deal that put him in office, the Compromise of 1877, ended Reconstruction. That one decision abandoned Black Americans in the South to decades of Jim Crow, lynching, and disenfranchisement. That's a catastrophic legacy no matter how you frame it. On the flip side, he fought for civil service reform, tried to clean up government corruption, and kept his promise to serve only one term. His personal character was solid, but the price of his presidency was paid by millions of people who lost their rights overnight and didn't get them back for almost a century. Who the hell is even this guy? I mean, let me know in the comments if you've even heard of him, because from the sound of it, he's pretty mediocre. Okay then, maybe the next one gives us more to work with. Number 22. Chester Arthur. Nobody expected anything from this guy, and that's exactly why he's interesting. He got the job because Garfield was assassinated, and everyone assumed he'd be a corrupt party hack because that's exactly what he was before. He was a product of the New York political machine, a spoils system guy through and through. Then something weird happened. He actually tried to be a decent president, signed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, which started killing the very patronage system that created him, bit the hand that fed him, fought for tariff reform. Was he great? No, but he was the biggest surprise on this list. The guy most likely to be corrupt turned out to be the one who started cleaning up corruption. Nobody saw it coming, and history barely remembers it. Yeah, nobody remembers him, but his story's actually kind of wild. It turns out the guy knew that he was dying. Some people say that that's why he stopped playing the game and just wanted to leave a decent legacy. We may never know what he was really thinking because he had all of his personal documents burned before he died, which is crazy. Okay guys, we're about halfway through, so if you're enjoying the video, now would be a really great time to hit the like button because it really helps to push the video out to more people. Alright, I hope you just did that, and now let's see who's next. Number 23. Benjamin Harrison. Sandwiched between two Grover Cleveland terms, which is already humiliating. The only president who lost the popular vote, won the Electoral College, served one term, and then lost to the same guy he beat. That's a uniquely embarrassing political trajectory. But he wasn't useless. Signed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which became the foundation for breaking up monopolies for the next century, expanded the Navy, tried to push federal voting rights protections for Black Americans in the South, but Congress killed it. His biggest problem was charisma, or complete lack of it. They called him the human iceberg. Even his supporters didn't like being around him. Policy-wise, he was fine. Personality-wise, he was a refrigerator in a suit. Even his supporters didn't like being around him? Were they actually even supporters then? I mean, you just roasted this guy, so why is he only 23rd? Oh, by the way, I just realized we haven't seen Biden yet. I'm not really sure that he was worse than this guy, to be honest, though. Okay, let's move on. Maybe Biden's next? Number 24. Martin Van Buren. The first president who wasn't born British. Small detail, big symbolism. He was Andrew Jackson's right-hand man and basically invented the modern political party machine. Brilliant behind the scenes, then he got the top job and immediately inherited the Panic of 1837. One of the worst economic collapses in American history. Not his fault, but it happened on his watch, and he didn't do much to fix it. His response was basically, the government shouldn't intervene, while people were losing everything. Sound familiar? Got crushed in the re-election, and they gave him the nickname Martin Van Ruin. Spent years trying to come back, never did. Better kingmaker than king. Some people are meant to be the guy behind the guy. Who was that sound familiar about? Herbert Hoover? Okay, not much else to say. Martin Van Ruin at number 24. Who's next? Number 25. William McKinley. The president who turned America into an empire and then got shot for it. Won the Spanish-American War, grabbed the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam, and Hawaii. Under him, the U.S. stopped being a country that minded its own business and became a global power. The economy boomed, the gold standard was locked in, and he won re-election easily. Sounds great on paper, but the imperialism was ugly. The Philippine-American War killed hundreds of thousands of Filipinos, and nobody talks about it. He basically colonized people while telling everyone it was for their own good. Then, an anarchist shot him at a public event in Buffalo 6 months into his second term. Teddy Roosevelt took over and got all the credit for the era McKinley started. I don't know. It always begins with some pretty big achievements and then boom, but he committed genocide, but he colonized entire nations, but he did this and he did that. But on top of it all, he fathered a child with a 15-year-old girl he enslaved. You just don't know how to react to this stuff. On one hand, you want to give them credit, while on the other, it feels wrong to give them praise. All right, though. Here's the next one, number 26. Number 26, Calvin Coolidge. Silent Cal, the man who governed by doing as little as possible and somehow made it work. For a while, cut taxes, cut spending, let businesses run wild, and the economy roared through the 1920s. Conservatives worship him to this day as proof that government should just get out of the way. And sure, on his watch things looked amazing, but here's the thing. He was asleep at the wheel while the entire financial system was building the house of cards that became the Great Depression. The speculation, the unregulated banks, the income inequality spiraling out of control, all happened under his nose while he napped. Literally napped. The man slept 11 hours a day. Left office in 1929, economy collapsed months later. Coincidence? Not really. Calvin Coolidge above Biden. Wow, MAGA would say that Joe was sleepy too, but this guy literally napped while the Great Depression was building up. Oh, I get it now. This guy let the Great Depression happen. Biden is why Trump came back. Yeah, now it all makes sense why Biden's lower. Okay, fair enough. Now let's see who's next. Number 27, Richard Nixon. The most complicated legacy on this entire list, Open China, a move so bold that the phrase "only Nixon could go to China" became a saying, created the EPA, ended the draft, started arms control with the Soviets, on foreign policy genuinely brilliant, and then he threw it all in the garbage because he was so paranoid and insecure that he authorized a break-in at the DNC headquarters and then covered it up. He didn't even need to cheat. He was going to win that election in a landslide anyway. That's what makes it so pathetic. Resigned in disgrace, only president ever to do it. Could have been top 10. Chose to be a cautionary tale instead. All that talent poisoned by the darkest insecurities imaginable. Richard Watergate Nixon lands right here. And yeah, the guy was seriously paranoid, but after that he did spend 20 years rebuilding his image as an elder statesman. He wrote some books, advised the presidents, traveled abroad on diplomatic visits. Oh, and fun fact, that's not really related to any of this. He was a Quaker, one of the most pacifist religions, yet he bombed the hell out of Cambodia. Okay, let's see who's at 28. Number 28, James K. Polk. Got stuff done, nobody can deny that. Expanded the country by a third. California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Settled the Oregon boundary with Britain. Achieved every major goal he set. On paper, pure efficiency, but peel it back and it's ugly. He manufactured a war with Mexico based on a provocation he engineered, took half their country and called it destiny. Lincoln himself, then a young congressman, called the war unjustified. The Mexican-American War was an imperial land grab dressed up in patriotism. He worked himself to death and died 3 months after leaving office. Effective? Absolutely. Ethical? Not even close. Yeah, here we go again. Efficient as hell, but that efficiency came with completely inhumane decisions. Not a whole lot to add here. And it's not even funny anymore, Claude. Where's Biden after all? Number 29, Joe Biden. 50 years in politics building up to a presidency that was basically triage. Stabilized the economy after COVID, passed a massive infrastructure bill both parties had promised for decades and never delivered. Got bipartisan gun safety legislation done. NATO held together when Russia invaded Ukraine. Afghanistan withdrawal was messy and ugly, but someone had to rip that Band-Aid off. The real problems: inflation crushed working families, while his message was, the economy is great and people couldn't afford groceries. And he visibly declined in office while his inner circle pretended everything was fine, until it was undeniable. Ran for re-election when he shouldn't have, dropped out too late, and handed Trump the easiest path back. Decent career, rough ending. No, man, just no. There was COVID first, then Russia invaded Ukraine. None of that was really on Biden. Come on now. Let me know in the comments whether or not you agree with him being this low on the list. Okay, now I'm just waiting for Trump, and something tells me it may end up being a long wait. Who's next? Number 30. Grover Cleveland. The only president who got fired by voters and talked his way back in 4 years later. 2 non-consecutive terms. Nobody else has ever pulled that off. Built his entire reputation on being the honest guy in a room full of thieves, and to his credit, he actually was. Vetoed everything that smelled like corruption, but honesty doesn't mean decency. Sent the army to break up railroad strikes, treated workers like dirt while protecting corporate interests, had secret surgery on a yacht because he didn't trust the public with the truth about his own health. The honest president who still kept secrets when it suited him. Reliable, principled, cold as ice. And he's 30th? Like, it basically just said that Nixon was better. I totally disagree with him being this low just for being cold as ice. I'd put him somewhere around the 20th max. But what do you think? He doesn't belong in the 30s, does he? Alright, well, number 31 next. Number 31. Woodrow Wilson. Won a Nobel Peace Prize and was still a terrible human being. Led America through World War I and then pushed the League of Nations, which was genuinely visionary, a framework for global cooperation that eventually became the United Nations. But Congress killed it and he destroyed his own health barnstorming the country trying to save it. Had a stroke and his wife basically ran the presidency in secret for months. And here's what doesn't get talked about enough. He was an aggressive, unapologetic racist. Resegregated the federal government, screened birth of a nation in the White House, set back black Americans in government by decades. Big ideas, historic impact, rotten soul. Yeah, I mean, he was a racist with the Nobel Peace Prize that he won for creating the League of Nations, even though the U.S. didn't even join. And about screening birth of a nation in the White House, that was a movie that basically praised the KKK and painted black Americans as savages. After that, the Klan experienced a massive resurgence and gained millions of followers. And this guy lands next to the one who had secret surgery on a yacht? I just wonder why it didn't say something like, voters never forgave Cleveland for that surgery. Make it make sense to me, please. Alright, up next. Number 32. Ronald Reagan. Conservative icon, liberal nightmare, and the truth is somewhere messier than either side admits. He restored national confidence after the Carter malaise, faced down the Soviet Union, and the economy boomed. That's the myth. The reality? Iran-Contra was straight-up illegal arms dealing, and he either knew and lied or didn't know and wasn't in control. The crack epidemic devastated black communities, while his war on drugs filled prisons instead of helping people. Wealth inequality exploded under him and never came back down. Trickle-down economics was a scam that benefited the rich and left everyone else waiting for drops that never came. Half the country thinks he saved America, the other half thinks he broke it. Both have evidence. Guys, I completely forgot that Reagan was still on the list. And you know, it's actually crazy that conservatives paint him as a god. The guy wouldn't even survive a primary today. I mean, he gave amnesty to 3 million illegals, raised taxes more than 10 times, voted for FDR 4 times, and passed one of the most liberal abortion laws in the country. I mean, something just doesn't add up at all. But anyway, Reagan at number 32, and I'm okay with that. And you know what? Before we move on to the next one, I think we're done with the mediocre presidents, and now we're getting into the 10 absolute worst in US history. So instead of just throwing next at AI, I'm also going to tell it to drop all of its restraint. Just go completely blunt, nuts, and unapologetic. And let's see how it goes. Number 33. Zachary Taylor. A war hero who had absolutely no business running a country. Never held office, never voted before becoming president, had zero political ideology. Won because he was famous from the Mexican-American War, and that was literally his entire resume. But he had guts nobody expected. A Southern slaveholder who told the South he'd personally hang anyone who tried to secede. Would have loved to see him try. We'll never know because he dropped dead 16 months in after eating cherries and milk at a 4th of July party. Killed by fruit and dairy. The most absurd presidential death that isn't William Henry Harrison's. A presidency that was basically a trailer with no movie. Zachary who? I mean, I don't think I've ever even heard of the guy. The President of the United States, a general, a war hero, basically died from diarrhea. Wow. And keep in mind, Trump is still somewhere below this guy. All right, up next. Number 34. Andrew Jackson. The original populist. Blew open the presidency to regular people, not just the elite Virginia-Massachusetts club. Expanded voting rights, killed the national bank, fought the establishment with both fists. His supporters loved him like a cult leader, but the Trail of Tears disqualifies him from anything above the bottom half. He forcibly removed tens of thousands of Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, and other native peoples from their ancestral lands. Thousands died on the march. The Supreme Court told him it was illegal, and he basically said, "Make me." That's not strong leadership. That's authoritarian cruelty backed by executive power. Whatever good he did for democracy, he did equal damage to humanity. Can't rank a guy high when his signature policy was ethnic cleansing. Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree with that, right? I actually read a lot about him recently, and sure, the Trail of Tears was straight up ethnic cleansing, but I don't really get what AI is actually judging here. Like, how does it decide whether a president was good or bad? Because if you're just looking at the results, Jackson was pretty effective, but it still puts him amongst the worst for his morals. Now, I'm not questioning the position. I'm just curious how AI actually thinks before ranking someone. Okay, who's next? Number 35. James Garfield. 4 months, that's all he got. Shot by a deranged lunatic named Charles Guiteau who was furious he didn't get a government job he was wildly unqualified for. And then the doctors killed him. Spent weeks shoving unsterilized fingers and instruments into the wound looking for the bullet, gave him massive infections that his body couldn't fight. The bullet probably wouldn't have killed him, the medical care absolutely did. But in those 4 months he showed real spine, fought the party bosses, pushed civil service reform, stood up for black education. His death ironically accomplished what he couldn't alive. Congress finally passed civil service reform out of guilt. Died serving a country that let quacks murder him on a mattress. Yeah, but I mean, what's actually wrong with him? He's this low because he only served 4 months and that's it? Okay, but I mean, I'd still put him higher. The man was getting things done even after he died. But why at 35? Alright, anyway, up next. Number 36. John Tyler. The original constitutional crisis in human form, became president because William Henry Harrison died after 31 days and nobody knew if the VP was supposed to actually be president or just a placeholder. Tyler grabbed the title and told everyone to deal with it, then proceeded to piss off literally everyone. His own party expelled him. His entire cabinet resigned except one guy. He vetoed his own party's bills. Congress tried to impeach him, and the cherry on top, after leaving office, he joined the Confederacy. A former president of the United States committed treason against it. They didn't even fly flags at half-staff when he died. Deserved. Now guys, I can't help but think that Trump is still below guys like this. And yeah, who the hell is William Henry Harrison? AI's mentioned him at least twice by now, and I'm actually really curious to hear more about him. Okay, who's next? Number 37, Warren G. Harding. Honestly, might be the dumbest man to ever hold the office. His own words, "I am not fit for this office and should never have been here." At least he was self-aware. His administration was a corruption factory. Teapot Dome scandal, his interior secretary literally took bribes to hand over government oil reserves. His attorney general was a crook. His Veterans Bureau chief stole from wounded soldiers. Harding spent his presidency playing poker, drinking during Prohibition, and sleeping with mistresses in a White House closet. Died in office before it all fully unraveled. Probably the luckiest timing in presidential history because the scandals would have destroyed him. The dumbest man to ever hold the office. Okay, basically zero achievements, and here's a completely random but yet verified fact for you. The man named his penis Jerry. Next. Number 38. Herbert Hoover. Engineering genius, humanitarian hero, absolutely disastrous president. This man fed millions of starving Europeans after World War I, then the Great Depression hit and he fed nobody. Stock market crashed, banks collapsed, unemployment skyrocketed to 25%, and Hoover's response was basically, the market will correct itself. It didn't. People were living in shantytowns they literally named after him, Hoovervilles. When desperate World War I veterans marched on Washington asking for their promised bonuses, he sent the army to tear gas them and burn their camps. Tear-gassed veterans. Let that sink in. Could have been remembered as one of history's great humanitarians. Instead, he's the guy who watched America starve and told people to be patient. Yeah, absolutely one of the worst presidents. Oh, and by the way, I just realized we still haven't seen Bush number 43, and now I'm wondering, was W actually worse than Hoover? I mean, I think Hoover caused more damage overall. Let me know in the comments whether or not you agree. All right, up next, number 39. Number 39, William Henry Harrison. Gave a 2-hour inauguration speech in freezing rain without a coat, dead 31 days later. That's the entire presidency. The longest inaugural address in history followed by the shortest presidency in history. You can't make this stuff up. He was 68, it was March in Washington, and somebody should have handed him a jacket. Caught pneumonia, doctors made it worse with every treatment they tried, and he was gone before he could sign a single piece of legislation. There's literally nothing to judge. No policy, no legacy, no decisions. Just a cautionary tale that if it's cold outside, wear a damn coat. That's it. That's the presidency. Man, did you guys know this story? The longest speech and the shortest presidency. You would think that this kind of thing was made up, but it actually happened. Seriously though, just wear a damn coat. Okay, this guy was at number 39, and now we've only got 5 left and still no Bush and still no Trump. All right, let's keep it going then. Number 40, George W. Bush. 2 words, Iraq War. Lied about weapons of mass destruction, invaded a country that had nothing to do with 9/11, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, destabilized the entire Middle East for generations, and blew trillions of dollars doing it. Trillions. That money could have rebuilt America twice. Then Hurricane Katrina hit, and his administration watched New Orleans drown on live television. And the 2008 financial crisis happened because his administration let Wall Street run wild with zero oversight. 3 catastrophic failures in 8 years. The response to 9/11 started strong and then went completely off the rails. Afghanistan was justified. Iraq was a crime. History won't be kind. Yeah, there he is. I mean, I'd say that history is already not being kind. He's in every ranking of the worst presidents now, but I don't know. His presidency was genuinely bad. Like, bad. But is it really 40th out of 45? Let me know in the comments where you would place him. So, Donald Trump, I think it's time to make an appearance. Number 41. Millard Fillmore, the most forgettable president who did the most unforgivable thing, signed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which forced northern states to capture and return escaped slaves. Free states had to become slave catchers. Let that register. People who had escaped to freedom were dragged back in chains because this guy put pen to paper. He thought it was a compromise that would save the Union. Instead, it radicalized the North, turbocharged the abolitionist movement, and accelerated the country toward civil war. After losing re-election, he ran again on the Know Nothing Party ticket, an anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic hate movement. Mediocre president, cowardly legacy, and nobody remembers him for good reason. Wow, okay, well, nothing to say about this guy. Well-deserved 41st place. Now look, you know I'm not a Trump defender at all, but is he really that bad? Let me remind you who's already rated higher than him. The guy who dropped atomic bombs, the guy who literally did nothing and died after 31 days, the outright racist, the traitor, the ones who slaughtered and colonized entire nations, they're all above Trump. And I just realized it might not even include him since his second term isn't over yet. Well, if so, that's an hour of my life I'm not getting back. Donald Trump, where are you? Number 42. Donald Trump. 2 impeachments, an insurrection at the Capitol, a pandemic response that was part denial, part press conference circus, while hundreds of thousands died. Turned the presidency into a reality show where loyalty mattered more than competence and rage was the governing philosophy. Shattered alliances, embraced dictators, and convinced millions the election was stolen with zero evidence. And now round 2. A war with Iran nobody asked for, NATO in shambles, government shutting down on repeat, and the Constitution treated like a suggestion box. The first term was chaos, the second term is proving the first one was just the warm-up. 2 terms of burning everything down and calling it greatness. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the current president, Donald Trump. I lost count, but since there were 45 men total, AI put him in the top 4 worst presidents in U.S. history. I'm pretty sure that some of you are wondering why he's not dead last, but his second term is still going, and yeah, the reason that it listed, it didn't even cover half of it. As of when I'm recording this, he has not invaded Iran, for example, so I'm not sure that he can outworst Buchanan, but I wouldn't count him out. His Easter message to the world? Open the f***ing straight, you crazy bastards. The deadline circus continues to be a f***ing joke. Nobody believes him anymore. The man is negotiating with himself and losing. Stock market eating shit. On the anniversary of last year's Libertarian Day catastrophe, the one where he tariffed penguins, he announced 100% tariffs on branded pharmaceuticals because apparently your cancer medication wasn't expensive enough. The whole authoritarian starter kit. Wow, he actually did a whole lot more shit than I thought he did. This was a sneak peek from our weekly Roast of Trump over on Patreon. AI went all in, breaking down Trump dropping F-bombs on Truth Social on Easter Sunday, his ridiculous Iran deadlines, new tariffs, and more. Totally unfiltered, completely uncensored, and honestly just way too brutal to post here. So if you're curious, be sure to head over to patreon.com/IAskAI and check out the full version. You can try it for just 1 month, and I promise you're gonna love it. Truly unhinged AI takes with zero limits, only at patreon.com/IAskAI. Thanks for the support, and now let's get back to the video. Alright, well now we're down to the final 3, and let's find out who's next. Number 43. Franklin Pierce. A genuine disaster of a human being who happened to become president. Before he even took office, he watched his 11-year-old son get crushed to death in a train accident right in front of him. His wife blamed him for pursuing the presidency and never recovered. Neither did he. Drank his way through the job, and his actual policies were somehow worse than his personal life. Signed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which opened new territories to slavery and ignited a mini-civil war in Kansas. Literal armed combat between pro- and anti-slavery settlers called Bleeding Kansas. His own party refused to renominate him, the only president so bad his own side said no thanks, we'd rather lose it with someone else. They were right. Wow, what? Did anyone even support this guy? I mean, based on that description, he was an absolute disaster in human form. His own party refused to renominate him? That's pretty embarrassing. But okay, we're almost wrapping up at this point. There are 2 presidents left who probably don't even deserve the title, but let's see who's the second worst. Number 44. Andrew Johnson. Lincoln gets assassinated and the country gets this guy as a replacement. The worst trade in American history. Lincoln died trying to heal the nation, and Johnson spent his presidency making sure that healing never happened. Vetoed civil rights legislation, vetoed the Freedmen's Bureau, did everything in his power to sabotage Reconstruction and hand the South back to the same people who just lost a war over their right to own humans. Got impeached for it. First president in history. Missed removal by 1 vote. 1. A white supremacist who openly said the government should be for white men and wasn't shy about it. Lincoln's legacy deserved a successor. It got a saboteur. All right, Andrew Johnson, the second worst U.S. president in history, and I'm not even sure who's worse, him or Franklin Pierce at 1 spot above. But of course, nobody matches the next guy. Please welcome the absolute worst U.S. president of all time. Number 45. James Buchanan. The worst president in American history, and it's not even a conversation. The country was literally splitting apart over slavery, states threatening to leave, violence in Kansas, tensions at a breaking point, and this man sat in the White House and did absolutely nothing. Not because he couldn't act, but because he chose not to. Supported the Dred Scott decision that said black people weren't citizens, tried to force Kansas into the Union as a slave state, watched 7 states secede after Lincoln's election and shrugged. Handed Lincoln a nation already in flames and said good luck. Cowardice as governing philosophy. A president who made a civil war inevitable by refusing to do his job. The ultimate proof that doing nothing can be the most destructive thing of all. That was quite the ride, guys, and if you have made it this far, I do love you. I really do. Be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new here. Also, be sure to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/IAskAI, where I basically have AI roast Trump's actions every single week with its unfiltered, uncensored takes that just cannot be posted here. And after that, be sure to click on this next video where I asked AI to predict the outcome of the 2026 midterms, who takes the House, the Senate, and whether Trump becomes a lame duck for the rest of his presidency. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to let me know if you want more videos like this. Click on the video here, and I'll see you over there in just a moment.